Hi, Tab. I already started recording, so we're good to go.
Thank you. Do you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm just going to wait, give it another 3 minutes.
Sure.
Um, I saw there was some one or two people still shows on hold. I know you're not putting people on hold, but for some reason, I see right now someone named Jeannie Helmer is on hold.
I think that means she's making attendee. Let me see.
Yeah,
Not anymore. There.
yeah. I mean, I didn't have to wait, but I even saw just one or two people every time I look at the list, and but
So on hold means that they might be in another team's
Yeah.
meeting. So they,
oh,
yeah,
okay,
Yeah.
not
okay.
necessarily in the lobby, but on hold. Hey, I need to duck into this meeting real quick. Then they'll come back.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay, thank you.
I'm gonna go check on the other meetings. Thanks.
So I have another meeting to go to, by the way. So good luck with your presentation.
Thank you, Rick.
All right, have a good one. Bye.
You too. Bye. Okay, looks like it's noon time, so I'm going to get it started. Thank you all for joining on a Friday afternoon. I do appreciate that. And also, I thank the organizers, for putting this together. People are going through a lot of challenges with being remote. Kids are at home. It's not a normal time for us, right? And arranging a conference and running it takes a lot of effort. I've done few, so I know what goes behind the scene. So we have about 55 minutes talking about Azure SQL performance optimization. Now I know recently, if you're following up, Microsoft kind of broadened the definition of Azure SQL. It's kind of a family. So managed instance, Azure SQL that we know, and hyperscale, and also Azure SQL running on Azure VM. They all fall into the same category. And in Portal nowadays, you can see all your resources in one pane. But this talk is totally focused on Azure SQL database. I'm not going to talk about Azure SQL running on, SQL Server running on Azure VM or managed instance. So if you have some particular question about those, you can reach out to me separately. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to keep it totally focused on Azure SQL Database. And I'll be monitoring the chat, so just put your questions there and I will talk about those. So I'm not going to read this slide, just in case if you need to contact me later on. Take a note of my contacts on the left. All of those 4 methods will work for me, and I'll make sure that I do answer your question or follow up with you. So, I'm primarily operational DBA, and of course, I'm switching my my skill a little bit as we are embracing Azure more and more. Doing some more development than I used to do before. So this is a common scenario that that the DBAs face. People will come and say, everything is running slow, right? And one of the question that I normally ask them is, was there any code change or any deployment recently? And as you can probably guess, the answer will be no. And then I'll ask them, did they check their storage, right? I know for Azure SQL, probably it's not a valid question because you do not have any control on what kind of storage you choose. You do have some control when you are deploying what SQ you are deploying. But other than that, it's not like you are choosing a VM and you have the choice of choosing what kind of disk you are. But in general, if you ask them, even on-prem, most of the time the answer is no. How about network? Because I don't know where your if your app servers are on the on the same zone, on-prem cloud. Do you what kind of connectivity you have between your between your app servers to the location of your Azure SQL database, right? So you get the answer no, and then when you admit that it must be database, everybody's happy, right? Because okay, now we found someone. And then this is a cartoon that I saw long time ago. There's a fellow gentleman, Microsoft MVP Pinal Dave from India, on his website. My queries are running slow, create an index, everybody's happy, life goes on. But I wish that our life was that simple, right? So now for Azure SQL Database, before we go into talking about performance optimization, I'm not going to go into details, but you definitely want to know your limits, right? Because there are different SQs available. There are DTU models, vCore models. Even when you go to vCore, there's general purpose, business critical. Even within that, there are other options, right? Gen 4 is going away. It's mostly now Gen 5. And then there's also serverless option and of course hyperscale. So what are you getting into? Like, things are changing. Like on-prem, before when you'll order or will ask for a server or a VM, I could say that, I want this many CPUs and this much of memory. Now you cannot ask for memory for Azure SQL Database. So you want to know how much memory you are getting. What's the size of your 10 DB? Can you configure it? What's your backup, right? Because on-premise we are used to, I can set up my own backup. I can take transaction log backup every 2 minutes or every 15 minutes or every hour. I can choose different model, recovery model. I can be in full recovery or I can be in simple recovery. And that will dictate what kind of backups I can take. In cloud, for Azure SQL Database, I cannot do that. It's always in full recovery model. So you want to know that, and you want to know how frequently Microsoft is taking backup of your database, because these are all important, right? So because this can have effect on your performance. And then, what's your transaction log rate, right? Because that's a huge thing that, while I was doing POC, I got caught with this because if you are on a business critical, you automatically get high availability. to meet the SLA that they are promising, they will throttle your transaction log rate, means how much transaction log you can generate, because they have to make sure those logs are getting played on the other side or on the other nodes. So you want to know those. I'm not going to talk about detail, but please, when you deploy, look at your requirements and look at those and make sure you understand what you are, what you are buying or what you are setting your Azure SQL database with. So next, the tools, right? So there's a misconception in the community that, well, I'm moving to cloud. Now I have to learn all these new tools and techniques to monitor my performance and to troubleshoot those, right? That's actually a myth. It's not true. So just to prove that point, if you look at this slide on the left, I said traditional. So DMVs, extended events, query store, intelligent query processing. You can still take advantage of all this even on your Azure SQL database. Actually, I'm not sure, some of you might know, I saw Joe is here, listening to this. Right now, we are also having our virtual PaaS summit. Today is the last day. And there have been multiple sessions. Yesterday, actually, I was listening to Pedro Lopez, and he's a program manager for Microsoft. They were talking about intelligent query processing on Azure SQL database, and some of the improvements that are coming in the in 2021. Query Store, Microsoft is huge investment on Query Store. You will see 2021, there's a bunch of things will be built on Query Store. So they are still there. There are events created only for Azure SQL database, within the extended events. So we can still take advantage of those. And then on the right side, those two things are particular to Azure SQL database, and I'll spend much time on those to show you. So I talked about DMVs. So if you look at this, there are three major categories of DMVs. And you can still use those. And there is a gentleman named Glenn. He used to work for SQLskills.com. He doesn't work there any longer, but he's also, I'm not sure if he's a MVP any longer or no, but he used to be a Microsoft MVP. Probably still he is. He has a bunch of queries that he already wrote, and he published a newer version every month. And he also converted those to SQL notebooks. If you don't know what is notebook, I highly urge you to look at it, especially if you're using Azure Data Studio. So you can just download it for free and start using it. And he has a separate separate notebook, and he also has a separate zip files for different versions of on-premise SQL Server, and also one set for just for Azure SQL database. So download those, take a look. There are a few DMVs I want to mention that I put in the slide. Please take a note of those. These are exclusive for Azure SQL database. The first one is actually it continuously looking at your resource uses on a Azure SQL database every 15 seconds, and it only keeps it for an hour. But then if you go to the second one, the sysresource underscore stats, it actually does it for every database within a logical server, and it actually keeps it for 14 days. And there are other two, look it up on books online. These are very helpful, especially what I was talking about, your limits. If you want to know your limits, that what SQ you deployed your database, and what are your limits on some of the stuff that I was showing in the previous slide, you want to look at DM user DB resource governance. That will show you some of your limits. For extended events, right? So as I said, there are new catalog views and DMs and DMVs. One of the things changed that between on-premise and Azure SQL database is your target. On-premise, you can write to any local disk or any shares that we want to, but when you deploy Azure SQL database, you do not have access to the underlying storage. So you can either put your destination to as a ring buffer or to Azure storage container. And you have to change one mindset, right? When you go to Azure SQL database, Even though you see a server, you see a master database, that's just a logical container. Behind the scene, your databases can be residing in different physical SQL server and different physical hardwares, but they put it, you know, in a logical container. So all your definitions for extended events has to be a database scope, right? It's not in a server scope anymore. And if you go to books online, you'll see the syntax difference. It's very minor. If you are used to using extended event on premise, this is easier for you for the transition. Query store. So I know I said here, enable query store and then let query store collect the data, and then you can, mine that data and find insight out of it, where your query regressed, where types and whatnot. In Azure SQL Database, query store is enabled by default, so you do not need to enable it, but you might want to configure it, right? You might want to increase your size, you might want to change your retention, flush interval, and bunch of things that you can still adjust over there. So look at those. These are all built-in reports. As soon as you turn on your query store, you get these reports automatically behind the scene built for you without doing anything. There are a few, if you look at the weight stats one, that's pretty new. It is pretty cool. I'm not going to go into details. You can right click, open it. It shows you your, highest weight types since last reboot. And from there, you can drill down to which queries are causing those weight types, and it shows you the query plan and everything. Another one is a force plan, which is another cool. You can just do it just from this GUI without doing anything. You can go and look at the two query plan from the same query with the query ID, and you can pin another plan for the better one. So these are all built in for you, and these are all same as pretty much same for on-premise. This is a chart for intelligent query processing. I know. On the right side, if you say, I said Azure SQL Database SQL Server 2017 and 19, I put those on-premise SQL Server version. I know in Azure it doesn't, there's no concept of SQL 2017 or 19. Everything is controlled by the compatibility level. I'm very much aware, but I put it there just so in your head you can, you have a timeline that you can think of when these things were released. And all of these are available in Azure SQL Database, except T-SQL scalar UDF inlining. That is not available in Azure SQL Database. Other than that, anything you see in this chart is available in Azure SQL Database. And in fact, just yesterday in SQL Pass, and it's public now, it's not under NDA, there is two more feature that they talked about. There, one of the feature even they talked about in the keynote that's coming up, that looking at a query ID without doing anything, without even getting into the query, even if it's a vendor application, you can just get that query ID and you can add a hint to that query ID and it will work. That query hint will be implemented into that query next time it calls. So a lot of things coming on there. So keep an eye on this. Keep using this, same as on-premise. So I'll take a pause. I'm going to now go back to or transition to the features that are only available for Azure SQL Database. So far what I talked about, you've been using those on-premise, no change, keep using it, slight modification. I'm going to look at see if there's any question so far. Okay, are you able to view the slides? You're not able to. Okay, so there's no question, looks like. So please put your questions in the chat. I'm going to look at it, every probably, in appropriate time. So I make sure that I answer those, because I'm not sure if everyone can unmute or not. Okay, so let's move on. So whatever I'm showing you, I know I'm only showing slides, but because some of these things to show up in the portal takes time, right? Just to give you an example, like to give you, to give you a suggestion to add an index or to delete an index, it takes days for those suggestions to show up in some of these features that I'm going to talk about. So, for a 55-minute talk, it's not possible. So I have a bunch of queries and some PowerShell to set this up. If anyone is interested, let me know. I can send those to you with some instructions. So I ran this for days and days, and I captured some of this stuff from there. At the end, if we have time, we can look at some of those code. So let's move on. So when you go to Azure SQL Database, if you just look at the overview, right? If you just go to the overview page in the portal. So maybe we should, let's take a break and go to portal. So I'm in the portal. This is a dashboard. This is my Azure SQL server. Again, I said it's a logical server. Within that, I created an Azure SQL database. And all of these things I created using this PowerShell, the whole thing. And I'll upload this in my GitHub. You can download if you want, or just send me an email. I can zip this and ship it to you. And then I have a bunch of T-SQL queries that I ran against that database for a while, just to look at some data. I also have a one-time setup. I call this, as you can see here. I know I do not need to turn on the query store, but I did some setup with a storage, to ask it to use more. And then I set up some stress tables and some store prog that I can keep calling. Now, within here, I'm in the database pane, and we'll be talking about this overview. And down here, we'll be talking about performance overview, performance recommendation, query performance insight, automatic tuning. We'll be talking about alerts, metrics, diagnostics. And if we get to diagnostics, I'll try to show you what, if our destination of the diagnostics is a log analytics workspace, how you can use that. So that's kind of, the talk is about. But again, as I said, if we have to show all this in the portal live, it's just not possible within this, this short amount of time. That's why I prepared slides, and just to take advantage of the limited time that we have. So when you are in the overview page, if you deploy your Azure SQL database in a DTO model, which Microsoft really doesn't recommend anymore, Microsoft recommendations is to go to vCore model, but you can still deploy as a DTO model. So DTO is a database transaction unit. It's kind of a abstract unit of a combination of CPU, memory, and I/O. And if you want to know more detail, just go to Microsoft documentation, search for DTO. You will see there's detailed explanation. So if I'm just there, and someone said my things are running slow, and I see that I'm at the peak, right? And you can go back to 24 hours, 7 days. If you go from this drop down here, view max, you can see max, mean, and average. So that pretty much tells you that, hey, I deployed with so much of DTU, and you are throttled because we reached the max. So easy solution. You have to bump it up. Of course, you're going to be spending more money, but bumping it up is an easy solution, right? But comes with money. But you might want to look at other things, right? Do you have the right index strategy? What are the queries that are running, driving this up? And in subsequent slides, you'll see some of this, how we can drill down to those. So when I see that, and this is in the CPU model, right? I can see that my CPU percentage is 100%. And sometimes you might see that your CPU is not 100%, but it's still people are complaining because they are throttling because you log IO percentage, right? I talked about that before, because Microsoft is constantly looking at that, and they will throttle it if you cross your threshold. And there are charts in the Microsoft documentation that for what SQ, how many megabytes per second of log you can generate. So if you see that, again, you want to see, how you can rewrite your code, or what are the, what are the calls that are generating all those transaction logs or driving your CPU up, right? So that's a clear indication for you where to look at just by looking at this. And also in the overview, there is another thing is the size, right? Because you get a max size of your database, and you can slide it up and down. And if your database is full, if you have used all your data space that you are guaranteed for that SQL, and then someone is seeing weird issue, then you know that you reached your size. Now, what do you do? That depends, right? Depends on many things. But that's a place that you might want to look at if people are seeing issues that their inserts are failing, bulk loads are failing, or whatnot. And of course, you shouldn't be waiting to fill it up 100%. There are other ways. If you are turning on your metrics to go to log analytics workspace, you can generate alert from there that when I reach to that percentage, let me know. So I can, start planning what I want to do. Plus on the overview page here, as you can see, there are other 7 things that you can see. What are the things that you have configured and what you did not configure, right? Like geo application auditing, advanced data security, which I think which just got rebranded. So you can see all this. Now, going to metrics, these are pretty much similar to what we knew as a performance counter on premise. They are a single metric or single data point for a particular time. And again, you can choose your time frame. You can choose, what metrics, and then you can also look at your granularity for how long you want to see those. They're all saved for 30 days by default without doing anything, even without sending to log analytics workspace. They're here for you, automatically saved. Then you can get a cool graph. Out of the graph, you can see, when things changed, right? At what point things started going up or going down. Now from there, you can also create an alert, which I do not recommend, because if you have hundreds of these Azure SQL databases, means if you create it from here, you have to create each one by hand, which you do not want. There's a better way, which if we get time, we'll get into that, to send this to log analytics workspace, write some Kusto query language, which I'll be talking about tomorrow. Actually, there's a New Hampshire code camp. I'll be talking about Kusto query language at 9:40 if you're interested, how you can build or scale this out. So you just do this one time, and doesn't matter if you're managing 100 or 1000 Azure SQL database, it's going to work for you same way. So once you set that up, alert, you can choose, it's a static, dynamic, how frequently to check, and what's your threshold value. And then based on that, you can select action group. Action group means saying, do I want to get a phone call? Do I want to get a pager, alert, email? At my workplace, I do not get any of this. I use the ServiceNow API. So if I have a alert trigger, it goes to ServiceNow, generates a ticket, look at my severity level. Based on that, I have templates in ServiceNow, and it tells me, where it goes. Okay, so we talked about alerts, metrics. Finally, we get to performance. Now, if you open the performance overview, this is what you see. Do I have recommendations? And is there any tuning activity in progress? Was there anything done automatically in last 7 days? And what's my mode? My mode is server or my mode is database? And I'll talk about those. But if you go here, and these are automatically getting generated for you behind the scene, I can see my top 5 queries by CPU consumption. So as I was telling you before, if you see that your CPU or your DTU is reaching that, you can just come here and you can, get your top 5 queries, And after that, not only CPU, I can look at it up by IO. I can also look by log IO, means who is generating more transaction logs. I can select from here. I can also look at my long running queries for the top 5. As you can see at the bottom, I can also do a custom lookup, right? So I can choose based on this time frame, number of queries, aggregation type. And once I choose all this, it will give me the top 5. Now I can drill down. I know these are only query ID, which doesn't tell me what's a query ID. What are these? I can click on one of this and it will take me to this page. Now I can see the exact query, what was generating, whatever metric I was looking for. More on that, once I click on that, I can see now more detailed metrics just on that one single query. It tells me that this was executed 175,000 times, duration, log I percentage, data IO, and CPU. So I can get into all this from performance overview page without doing anything. These are all getting generated for me behind the scene. And now once I want to look at a single query, I also have an option. Once I identify that query, how far I want to go back and what kind of aggregation I want to see. So next, let's talk about some performance recommendations. So right now, Microsoft has these 4 features. As you can see, the last one I put it in red, and this has been like this for a while. I don't know. I do not have any information on this, but if you want me to take a guess, I think this is going to go away. Even in the documentation, it talks about they are deprecating this, but still it shows up in the documentation. So I thought I'm just going to put in there just so later on if you're following up on my slides, you don't get confused like why I didn't talk about the 4th one. The 3rd one is still on preview. Now, performance recommendation and automatic tuning kind of goes hand in hand because you can totally keep automatic tuning turned off, but keep getting the performance recommendation, and you can take manual action based on these recommendations. One question I always get, especially on the drop index one. So Microsoft, I think in books online or in the documentation, I think it mentioned about 93 days or at least more than 90 days, right? So index only get recommended for drop if it's not used for, I think, 90+ days. And dropping unused index is not supported for premium and business critical service tier. When I first read that, I could not, I'm like, why they wouldn't do that, right? So it took me for a while to understand, because you have secondary replicas and you might be using the same index, not on the primary, but on the secondary for your read workload. And that's why they do not support that in those 2 service tiers, just so you know. So let's look at this in a little bit more detail. So this is how it looks like, right? Once a recommendation comes up, it gives you the table name, and it also gives you the index column. And it also has the impact, right? The high, medium, low. The impact is calculated based on what kind of gain you're going to get by deploying this index or by dropping that index. And once you get that, you can click on one of this. If you have automatic tuning turned off, which I'll show you, and then you come to this page, you haven't applied it yet. It's just showing you included columns, your index columns, table name, schema, and all the details, and how much space you need for that, right? Because you want to know if it's a big table, there are implications, right? Index size always has other implications, right? If you're going to read from that, those index pages are going to be brought to the memory and all that. So, and you probably want to look at this and you want to review what other indexes I have, and based on that, you probably want to make a decision. You can view your script. You can say discard. I don't I looked at it, I don't want it. Or you can say apply. Now, once you hit apply, it does apply and it cleared the index for you. But once it cleared the index, it also behind the scene keep monitoring the impact. Because you saw those high, medium, low, means it already made a decision what kind of impact you have. And now it's looking at those, right? Behind the scene that did it really do that impact or not? That's about index. There's one you saw for parameterized queries. So once you turn this on, what it does actually behind the scene, it enables force parameterization and then keep monitoring it for 24 hours. And I know this is just for a demo, I just only ran few queries. So this was an estimated impact. In this case, it says that our CPU savings will be 2.42, query duration decrease, and it keep monitoring based, against these baselines. If it thinks that no, it didn't do what it thought, it will revert, those deployments. And here you can see the deployment status, right? So you say deploy, it doesn't go and start deploying right away. There are certain conditions. It looks at the current workload, looks at the space, and based on that, when it is the right time, it will deploy those. Once it's deployed, also it looks at the impact, as I said, and when it is looking at the impact, the status you see is validating. And validating means, as I said, I thought I'm going to save 5% of CPU. Am I really saving it or not? I'll save this much of IO. Am I really saving it? Or the transaction log throughput will be reduced. Is it doing that or not? And as you can see in the here, there's two other status. One is an error, and the error shows up because by the time it started deploying, if you have automatic tuning, if you went there and deployed manually before it had a chance to deploy automatically, as you can see there, message customer manually applied the recommend index, means you already applied it, so it's not going to apply anymore. Another status is reverted. Why? Because this index did not improve the performance the way the engine thought that it's going to do. So now it's going to revert it. There's a validation report, success. Also, you can see the impact by yourself. Once you click that, it will show you, what's the real impact of this index. And based on that, if you're not happy, you expected more, you can always go and delete that. So we talked about this automatic tuning. So automatic tuning, and I'm not going to read this, but if some of you are working for a, for like a SaaS provider or, like multi-tenant, you have the same database, same schema, but you have hundreds of customers and they all have their own database. And, you want to deploy something, or you think, something is going to improve their performance across the board, right? You do not want to go to 100 servers and deploy it, right? This is a pretty cool feature. If you have automatic tuning turned on, it will, take care of it, for yourself. It will roll back for everyone if it thinks, or it will roll back for the ones that it thinks is not working, and it will probably keep it for those customers that, it gets the impact that it expected. So, it can make, your maintenance, your deployment a lot easier. So what's in the automatic tuning? One is a force plan, create index and drop index. Now, by default, if you didn't do anything, just keep that in mind. Force plan is automatically will be turned on for every Azure SQL database. As you can see in this chart, because every database will inherit from the server setting. And create index and drop index will be disabled by default. Now you can say, I do not want my databases to inherit from anything from the server setting, turn it off, and you can control it. If you like this feature, you want to have it on for all your servers, all of your database, turn it on. And when you keep creating database within the logical server, you do not have to do anything. Those will be automatically turned on for you. Now, how does this work? So Microsoft, I've been listening to a lot of sessions in SQL Pass and even in the keynote. If I got this right, it's probably about between 6 and 7 million Azure SQL databases they're running right now. I'm not sure if these are exclusively what we are talking about, Azure SQL database, or they're a combination of managed instance, and but it's still a huge number, right? So they are constantly collecting from all this, and behind the scene they're running machine learning algorithms to identify anomalies. And based on those, they have benchmarks, and whenever they see there's deviation out of it, they can easily identify, that things are not the way it should be. So this is just a picture from Microsoft documentation that, these are the 40 steps that it follows. It's learning and finding optimization opportunity, and then whenever it identify, it deploy. And as you see, I just said, even if you say deploy my index, it doesn't just go and deploy, right? It look at your current workload, look at your free disk space, and based on that, it deploy, and then it does everything that we just talked about, verify and revert if required. And this is a quote from the books online. Your CPO.io and log.io, everything has to be, if it's higher than 80% for 30 minutes, it is not going to create your index. It's going to wait for it. Same for space. There is a limitation. If you are above that, it is not going to create the index for you. This is a video. Of course, I'm not going to play it, but just put it here for reference. Watch it. Very short video, part of Azure Friday. If you don't know what's Azure Friday, look it up. Between 10 to 15 minutes video clips. Awesome. All by Microsoft employees. All the new features coming up, or they just talk about one of this like this to just get you started. Pretty cool. If you have time, listen to this. So we talked about this. So we're going to talk about now intelligent insight. And as I said before during my presentation, that do not create an alert out of a metric. And I gave you my reason, right? So with intelligent insight, you can get all this. I'm not going to read this, but the concept is from all your Azure SQL database and other Azure resources you can see on the left, you can send your metrics, which is kind of like a performance counters. It's a single piece of information for a single point of time, plus your logs, right? Logs has more data, right? Details, error messages, deadlock, XML graphs, and all that. You can continuously send those to Log Analytics, Event Hub, and storage. My preference is to Log Analytics workspace. The reason is there's something called Azure SQL Diagnostics, which is in preview right now. It's a bunch of dashboards. So once you keep sending those, behind the scene, they use a Custo engine. They're all column stored, highly compressed, high indexed. You cannot modify those data. So you can query those pretty quickly. And you can query by yourself with Custo query language and generate alerts based on your threshold. But even if you do not do anything and just send it to Log Analytics workspace, there are built-in dashboards for you or solutions that you can open and get bunch of insights out of your data. If you have, so like I was giving an example, if you're a SaaS provider, you have 100 databases with the same schema, 100 customers. And if you look at a same query, the exact one query, that one customer is complaining, but other 99 is not complaining. You can go to Log Analytics Workspace Solutions and drill down to that one query and to that one customer and look at that customer's problem, right? Why, that one is running longer. What kind of resources it's using? What's the duration? What's the IO? And all that. They're all getting built in for you without you doing anything, just setting it up to send it there. Of course, there's a cost to it. So you want to look at that too. And what some people do say, like, you want to keep there for a month because it's expensive. And if you want to keep it for long term, you can also send it to storage. So storage is one of the cheaper resources in cloud, in Azure. You can dump it into a storage and leave it for a longer term, and you can retrieve it from there. There are different ways. If you go to the Microsoft Doc, you can see how you can retrieve your data from storage. But once you send it to Log Analytics Workspace, and that's what I recommend, this is what happened behind the scene. It automatically finds, using artificial intelligence, that where things are wrong, and it gives you a warning. And it also gives you suggestion how to solve some of those problems. As you can see in this slide, it says that there's a root cause analysis. Heavy locking is affecting the database performance, and it also gives you your session ID that's involved. Now you can go and drill down more and more and look at those details. It's looking at mostly in the 4 different areas, right? Query duration, timeout, excessive void, and errors, and they are all categorized for you. And because of the work that's happening behind the scene, if you have these common problems, even on-prem, right? We have these problems, right? You can go and find reason and why these are happenings, and you can get some insight which will help you to decide what you need to do to solve some of those problems. So this is one of the dashboard that you get once you send your stuff to Log Analytics Workspace. So I'm going to break this down a little bit more for you. This is probably a little bit older slide, so you might not see this OMS Workspace. The name might have changed. I'm not 100% sure. So if you get stuck with this, please let me know. I'll look it up for you. So the way this works, if you see follow the arrows, you first create a Log Analytics Workspace. And at this point, this has nothing to do with Azure SQL database. You just created it, and it's there now. It's ready to receive data from different resources. And keep that in mind. Log Analytics Workspace is not just for Azure SQL database. Like in my company, on my network team, systems team, they all use it because every resource has different metrics and logs. And they also have different repository and different solutions based on the resource that you are sending data. So pretty much every team can take advantage. So once you do that, then on your Azure SQL database, on the left pane, we saw diagnostic settings. You click on that and you tell that send my diagnostic settings to this Log Analytics Workspace. You can see here, I clicked Log Analytics. I don't know if I can, I hope. Okay, yeah. Just want to zoom it a little bit. There are 3 things you can send to all 3, but in this case, I'm just sending it to Log Analytics Workspace. And then the data goes there. It tells you how many database the data is coming from, and this is my solution. This is an example of Kusto query language that I use. I was telling you, you can write your custom queries, and you can set up alerts. You can set up, via action groups, and not just alert. You can set up something called webhook to call a Azure function or a notebook to, to trigger, say like you see your CPU is 90% for certain time. you want to scale to a higher SKU, you can have a workbook or Azure function that will do automatically for you without doing it manually. You can even, if you're using Microsoft Teams, which we are using now for this presentation, you can actually send alert to your Teams, Microsoft Teams directly from here. So this is a dashboard that you get automatically built for you without doing anything. You can see the top metrics utilization per database in this one. And of course, I only have one, but if you have bunch of, databases, it will show all this here and you can choose which one you want to see. And this also has a nice hierarchy. Of course, I have only one. So if you have a subscription, it listed here, you can drill down to all your servers. From the server pane, you can drill down to your database pane. And from there, you can go further. Insight per resource, right? So if I have, multiple, queries, and as you can see, these are my query IDs. I can click on each one and I can get into more details for each one. I can also choose here, I don't know, I can also choose here for how long I want to see this data, right? I can drill down to more granular if I want to. Same insight per, per database. Now, for a single query, as I was telling you, you can get all these insights just for one query. Now, if I have the same query getting called by different client, they are sitting in different databases, they will all list here, and then I can sort those by different metrics, and then I can drill down into more details just from that caller and see why only one customer is having issue with the query and not others. Database weights, you can drill down. These are all generated for you by default. It actually also shows you behind the scene that what to query language was used, to generate that query, right? So if you're not familiar with to query, this is a nice way to take this. Then you can, start from here and modify this to customize it for your need. It also gives you a warning here, as you can see, because I was only running, I think I was running just 5 queries for a couple of hours. And it says that 2 of my queries has huge impact on my server. And I can click on those and see what are these doing, right? So, this one, of course, it says that the execution is higher and this is the execution duration. It gives you also the T-SQL statement for it. If you're using resource pool, Elastic Pool, Elastic Pool is a pool of resource that I can buy from Azure. And then I can say, I'm going to have 100 databases. They will share this resource, right? So, this is a good for, dev test. Also, some customers or if your company, you might have a business worldwide and all servers or all databases are not busy all the time. Right? So you might have a pool of resource that you want to share across the board. But the problem is sometimes you run into is, say you have 10 databases, just for example, one of the databases is very chatty, right? One of these is causing issues and you want to identify that, maybe take it out of the pool or do something else. But how to identify that which one is causing issues? So this is a perfect dashboard for that. This, I have, it tells you right away that which one is causing problem. Easily you can identify. Single query performance across the board. We talked about this. This is another video. I don't know how long is this one. I'm sure it's under 15 minutes because most of these are under 15. Talks about Azure SQL, analytics and how to set this up and what you can expect out of this. So another short one, nice one. You want to look at that. So we talked about 3 things for Azure SQL database, and we talked about a bunch of things that we use on premise today. That with a little bit of tweak, we can keep using those. So automatic tuning is for common performance issues. Query performance insight is Also built in, you do not have to do anything. You can get basic information just by opening these graphs and drilling down to keep drilling, and you will see this. If you really want to get into advanced monitoring and at a higher scale, that's when the Azure SQL Analytics come into play. You set up diagnostics, send it to Log Analytics Workspace, then you can do your own whatever you want to do. But for that, you need to know some query language. So we talked about all four. There's something that I want to show you at the end. In Azure SQL Database, when you connect through Management Studio, you have a standard report. Maybe I'm just going to show you that directly in Management Studio without slide. So I'm connected to this Azure SQL Server, and this is a demo database. If I go to report, standard report, okay, so it doesn't have anything. So I'm going to revert to, to my slide. So what this does is it shows you, keep looking at your workload, keep looking at your tables and uses, and gives you some recommendation that, hey, if you move this table to in-memory OLTP, which is a different technology totally that your tables reside on in-memory, and not everything can be, is a perfect candidate for in-memory OLTP. So please read about it and try to understand how it works. But it gives you some, some idea that, with minimal migration work, you can have a higher gain. So this is built into Management Studio. That's I just want you to be aware. These are some resources that I used, and I personally read when I was learning about this. And this is I just added recently because if you go to YouTube, I don't know if you know Anna and Bob Ward. They works for Microsoft. Bob is I think he's the chief architect for SQL products, and Anna is a data scientist. She also works with Bob on Azure SQL Database. Recently, they did a boot camp. The first one, it has about 8 hours of video for different segments. And the second one is just for beginners. There is about 61 very short videos, very useful. If you are interested, please go ahead and check those out. These are my contacts again. If I did not answer any question, if you go through my slides, you have a follow-up question, even though I might not know the answer, but I'm sure I can. I know people that I can get to and give you an answer. So I thank you again for joining. We have a couple of minutes. I'm going to go and look at the chat room. If there are any questions, I will. Joe said, thank you. I do not see any questions. I'm going to hang out here. You can still put questions in the chat room, but I think I'm going to stop sharing so the next speaker can come in.